Welcome to Booked, where two guys tell you about the books they're reading. I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Livius Nedden. Interlude tonight, but I want to start with a health check. As we get up in age a little bit, it's important that we have friends that check on us periodically. So, Rob, how's your mouth?
Mouth health. Mouth health. That's really hard to say. Mouth is okay. I have a little infection. This happened like a couple of years ago too. I got every now and then I'm gonna get mouth infections now apparently. So like a abscess.
Watch where you put that thing.
I know, right? Had like around 2 years ago it was an abscess. So there was like an infection, and now I don't know, another infection. But I am better. I was we were supposed to record this last night, and we did not because it was like 6:30 or so. We were planning on talking around 8, and I was like, man, this is just uncomfortable enough where I'm going to be miserable, and I'll probably end up going to the hospital after we record. And so I was like, let's just take care of this now, so I'm not at the hospital till 1 in the morning or whatever.
Well, and you would have been a miserable fuck too, I'm sure. Yeah. Mouth pain is terrible, man. Terrible.
Yeah, and it's like it's not that it was like super painful, but it was just that nagging, constant like pain. So
yeah.
So now I have antibiotics and I have Norco, which is nice.
Yeah, Norco's like one of those weird pain meds, because I think it's like super addictive, but you don't ever hear about it like you do like Vicodin and what's the other one that's killing people now?
Oxy? No, that's not a painkiller. See, this is how dumb I am about drugs. That'd be the worst.
So Oxycontin is a painkiller, but there's that new one that
oh yeah, like, it's fentanyl.
Should keep
right?
dying of fentanyl. That's it. Yeah. We don't hear a lot about Norco.
Yeah, from what I understand, and I'm no like chemist or anything. They're making a lot of these modern like opioid based drugs like difficult to like speed up the high or whatever. Like you can't like crush it up and snort it or whatever.
Oh,
so I wonder if this is one of those like specifically designed to not be taken advantage of or whatever.
Interesting.
So
well, I'm glad you're feeling better. How was your trip to the hospital?
So I get in there and I check in, and the guy at the counter is like, all right, so it's gonna be a little while, but he said it in a way that was like kind of apologetic, and so I said, so what does a little while mean? He's like, oh yeah, like 2 hours.
Jesus.
So I was like, well, what am I gonna do? Not get help?
Yeah.
So I settle into, we're gonna talk about this, but like I was watching this video about Twin Peaks, and that'll be a topic later. And half hour goes by or something, and I don't go to the hospital especially not like the ER. They call me, they take my blood pressure, and they ask me what's wrong, and they're like, all right, we'll get someone soon, like that kind of thing. And then I just settle in.
They're like, there's a pussy with a toothache sitting out here.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
Go take your break. When you come back from lunch, maybe see what he's...
It's so funny that you said that, because she's like, the nurse is talking to me. And by the way, she kind of flirted with me. But she's talking to me, and based on my problem, she's like, well, we could probably get someone pretty soon. Well, you're kind of more in the bumps and bruises category. Which basically is like, you fucking wimp, why'd you come to the ER? But like all the urgent care, it was like late enough in the day that like the urgent care places were closing and stuff. So but I was wearing a gray hat, and I have this like sweater I bought recently, and it was so like I wasn't dressed up or anything, but she kept talking about how nice the hat looked with like the combination of the hat I was wearing with like my beard and my glasses.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, well, thank you. And then, like, when she, like, dismissed me, she's like, yeah, just go be fashionable out there or whatever. And I was like, what's going on with this nurse? This is going to be like one of those pornos. Like, I was waiting for, like, the music to kick in or something.
I wish that I had, like, an elder in my family that always gave me, like, really good advice. So I could say things like, My uncle always used to say, never trust a woman that flirts with you when she knows your mouth's infected.
Yeah, that's good advice.
But and I wish I had a nephew to impart this wisdom to, but yeah, that's it's a little sketchy.
Yeah. So. But here's the weird part. That's not the weird part. So I go back and I sit down and I'm waiting to get called, and I'm watching this video about Twin Peaks, and I look up at one point and there is my aunt and my cousin, like like in the ER,
okay, all right,
having just like they're walking away from the counter that you check into.
Oh,
and at first I was like, is this some sort of weird like pain hallucination thing? Like, am I that much of a baby that like now I'm imagining my family has arrived for this special occasion? But no, my cousin was having some sort of gastrointestinal problem or something, so my aunt took him to the hospital. Aunt and uncle.
It's a weird place to run into family.
Yeah, it's a weird family reunion in the ER.
Yeah, and then you were like, listen, I'd love to chat, but I'm trying to watch this fucking YouTube video, so...
Well, they called me as they were checking in. They called my name, and so they're like, "What are you doing here?" And I was trying to walk away to get help, and I was like, "I'll catch up with you guys." And then I talked after I was done. I sat and I talked to them for about 20 minutes before I went and filled my prescriptions.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, but it's a thing, man. It's like reading a book. People come up and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You like hold up the book. Like, that's the new thing, right? If I'm watching a YouTube video, that means I want to watch this YouTube video and not talk to somebody.
Yeah, get out of my face. Trying to watch this super interesting Twin Peaks shit.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I guess we could go into that a little bit. So, I don't know. I use the Google newsfeed, and I know Apple has something similar, and I don't know how Apple, like, aggregates information for you, but apparently if you search for something enough times... like they just start showing you like news clips about it. And the more you click on related stuff, the more they show you of that. So not a lot of news on Twin Peaks after the return, which was a year and a half ago, I think.
Yeah.
You get the occasional like, will the return kind of thing. But this thing popped up, which really is just a YouTube video, like put into a news thing. And it says Twin Peaks actually explained parentheses no comma really. And it posted on October 20th. I feel like I only saw it like 2 weeks ago is when I got wind of it, so I let Rob know. And not because there are lots of Twin Peaks explained videos. There were podcasts like The View where people talked about it every week, right? There were YouTube breakdown videos, and there's a whole culture around trying to figure out what the fuck David Lynch was thinking or doing with Twin Peaks.
Or even that Mark Frost book.
Yeah, exactly. The Mark Frost book, yep. But the thing that caught my eye was that this video explanation is 4 hours and 35 minutes long. So this isn't a 20-minute... like there's the like everything wrong with videos. They're usually like 10 minutes, where they kind of break down a movie or a TV show or whatever. No, this is 4.5 hours explaining 3 seasons and 1 movie. Three seasons of a TV show and 1 movie that's a tie-in to the TV show. And I thought, well, this is fascinating. So I was like, I'm probably never going to watch this, but I sent it to Rob in a link. And then it, kind of kept popping up on my recommended on YouTube because I'd clicked on it at some point. So I finally decided to start watching it, and god damn it, this is fucking fascinating.
Yeah, you sent me the link, and then I kind of forgot about it. And I think because you started watching it, I decided, I was going to check it out as well. And like... first of all, I wonder how many videos there are on YouTube that are like 4.5 hours long, and I know there's the ones like that, like there's like infinitely looping videos for whatever reason, stuff like that. But like this is, what like a scripted kind of like, I guess scripted or not, but like a thought out. Planned.
Commentary, it's not. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'll put on the 10 hours of gothic classical music, like when I'm reading or
Right.
something, you know what I mean? Where it's just pre-recorded. This is actual 4.5 hours of content.
It's created content. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's, well, the first thing, so like, obviously we're not gonna spoil this video or whatever, but my first observation is like, you're nervous about committing yourself to 4.5 hours of YouTube viewing, and the production value and the way the dude talks and the way that it's edited, I think takes away a lot of the nervousness, because it's obviously a professionally produced and planned out video. It's not just some guy rambling in his, bedroom with like poor lighting and, crappy cuts and stuff like that. And then like it's the next day and he's wearing a different shirt. Like it was actually well produced.
Yeah. So let's give credit where credit's due. Twin Perfect is the YouTube user account name. And you would think that maybe that's, has ties to Twin Peaks or whatever. It really doesn't, because I looked through some of their other stuff, and they do Prometheus. The movie Prometheus actually explained Alien Covenant, a bunch of stuff on like the Man of Steel and the Batman versus Superman movie. So they do a variety of stuff. It's not they're not a Twin Peaks channel. There's a lot of stuff on the Silent Hill video game, so kind of random, weird things. But this, as Rob said, is a professionally produced video with tons and tons of outtakes as examples from the TV show and the movie, with tons of interview footage supporting, some of the theories that they have. It's really something special, and I will say so. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say what the gist of, because there is a pretty simple way to explain what the gist is of Twin Peaks based on this video. Here's where I want to start. On a scale of 1, complete disbeliever, to 10, this guy fucking absolutely nailed it. And there's no way for us to know, right? We're just based on the evidence produced. Where do you fall on the scale of how seriously do you take the 4.5 hours that you watched?
I mean, it's 8, probably like an 8.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I was thinking 8 or 9. There are a couple times where I kind of cringed a little bit and said, all right, that feels like a little bit of a stretch, but I'm a 10 on the overall. You know what I mean? Like yeah. What he's saying, Twin Peaks, the explanation for Twin Peaks, I'm on a 10. There are parts where I kind of veer off a little bit from what he thinks.
Right.
And I'll tell you, we reviewed all of Twin Peaks on a podcast called The View, which I name dropped a few minutes ago. There are about 12 people that tuned into those episodes. So if you're listeners here, here's what I'll say. I had no fucking idea. Rob, I'm just going to assume, had no idea, because he was on every episode of that with me. We were treating this as viewers that were trying to get a grasp of what was going on and failing to do so really at every turn. I think that we were as mystified at the end as we were at the beginning. But there is apparently a way to watch this. Now, I'm not going to do it because it's I don't know, it's countless hours, right? So like 38, like 50 TV episodes and 2 hours. But it would be interesting to take the information that we got and go back and try to watch it with Twin Perfect's explanation of the
Yeah, a couple thoughts. So I messaged Livius at one point, and I wasn't even all the way done watching the video. I think I still had a good hour and a half to watch, but that means I was a good 3 hours in.
Yeah.
And I said, like, I can't find anything yet that doesn't fit. Like, everything he's saying fits with, like, everything matches up to his theory of what's going on. To our credit, I think we did a pretty good job when we were talking about the show of trying to figure out what was happening, but I think where we completely missed was the why things were happening. And that's like, so there's a lot of symbolism. I mean, it's obvious that there was lots of symbolism and there was some sort of greater meaning that we never really scratched the surface of, I don't believe. But from episode to episode, I think we did a decent job of like figuring out what was going on.
Like we saw what was happening on the screen,
Yeah.
and we're able to interpret that. That's what it was. I agree. There's a couple things I want to say, and this will be light spoilers, so a little bit just for conversation. Obviously, anybody who hasn't seen this video isn't going to understand this. Maybe the two things that I was most impressed with were the white horse, and Nadine and the eye patch were probably two of the things that I was most impressed with. From and I'm gonna say from David Lynch's standpoint, because I completely bought both of those, those explanations for those two things, like hook, line, and sinker.
For me, I think the most revelatory thing about this guy's breakdown and explanation of everything was how much it made sense of the return.
Yeah, I want to talk off air a little bit about that, because I feel like at that point I am spoiling something. I will say this. I have not been sold on the fact that David Lynch is some kind of fucking genius. Okay? I watched Twin Peaks. It was fun in parts. I know that he has a very devout following. And, I didn't think he was bad at his job. This made me look at it very differently and say that the guy is probably a motherfucking genius.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a but coming.
You and your butts.
I think I like Twin Peaks less, even though I have a much stronger respect for David Lynch. I think that watching that, and don't get me wrong, I was into it because I was like, oh, okay, all right, but I think looking back at Twin Peaks now, with the information that I have, I actually like it less than I did.
Yeah, well, I have two thoughts about that. Firstly, I think that having watched this, if I were to rewatch the series, I would be much more relaxed about trying to figure shit out, because I feel like someone did that heavy lifting for me, so I'd just be more in the moment of watching it. So that's nice. But the thing that was, I think that it scratched away some of the allure of, maybe things that, because like before watching this video, everything could have been intentional and like maybe I just didn't understand it, but now there are things that I'm like, oh, this was crappy just because it was crappy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I could have like explained it away before watching this video, where now it's like, yeah. There's
so many things I want to talk about that video, and we'll do it off air. But it's just I'm having really weird feelings about the whole thing, and not that it's like affecting my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
tossing and turning in your
like I said, it's weird. I have a lot more respect for his brilliance.
Yeah.
But I actually like the product less now. I don't know. Anyway, if you watch Twin Peaks, and you're fine with having the answers revealed for you, I definitely think that, and it's hard for me to recommend anything that's 4.5 hours, man, but this is 4.5 hours very, very well spent. And not just from the Twin Peaks explanation stuff. There's some stuff about what some of the things that happen behind the scenes, in the production and stuff too, with Frost and Lynch and the studio, and so there's other stuff there too that's good. But man, I've really got to hand it to Twin Perfect for doing just a tremendous job with figuring all that out for us.
Yeah, it's just total insanity. Complete total insanity. The thing that I know, like, I scrolled through some of the comments on YouTube, and someone at some point in one of the comments,
where all good sense goes to die, YouTube comments.
Right, exactly. Well, except for this one comment where someone had decided to do timestamps based on topics. So they hyperlinked basically like a timestamp to the beginning of a topic, so you could, let's say you're talking about it later with people, or you want them to like remember a specific part of the video, you could click on the link and go right to that spot in the video. So I thought that was nice.
It's very, very nice. Yeah.
Kind of like, considering that, like you were saying before, we did a whole podcast where we talked about every episode. This really kind of shits on all that, though. Like, our discussion, seems so lame.
This is where the this is the closest we got. The one thing they talk about in this video was David Lynch's disdain for episodic murder mysteries.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly us saying that Twin Peaks was likely one of the first like ongoing nighttime serials.
Yeah.
Like that it really kind of changed the scope. And I guess I didn't know at the time that he had that disdain for it. But I mean, Twin Peaks is what opened the door for most of the TV shows that now you talk about, you know, with your coworkers or your friends the next day.
Yeah. I did send Livius a message earlier today. having watched that video brought back memories of how like Livius is completely incapable of recognizing when someone on screen is actually Wyndham Earl in disguise.
I know. And it's funny because I got to a point where they mentioned Wyndham Earl, and I was like, I looked at the screen and I was like, all right, if they're gonna show him, I'm gonna know who he is when I see him.
Oh, it's so good.
So go give Twin Peaks Actually Explained if you want to Google it. Is the title. Twin Perfect is the account that posted it, and go enjoy yourself for 4 hours and 35 fucking minutes. Jesus,
good Lord. Yeah. How many different sittings did it take for you to get through that?
3.
I think that's about the same for me.
Yeah, I
one
guess
hospital
4,
visit.
At one point, I put it on. I had like a 15-minute drive, so I just started playing it in the car, so I wouldn't count that as an actual. You know what I mean? Like, I was out of podcast to listen to. So, it's got 70. He's got 80,000 subscribers. It has 464,000 views, which, I mean, YouTube terms nowadays really not that big. His Prometheus video has like 5 million.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Actually, something weird came up, and I'm not going to do the thing where we pretend Livius doesn't know what I'm talking about, because I sent him an image before we started recording. But I've been on the quest recently, like we've talked about in previous episodes, to try and find physical copies of every book that we've reviewed. And obviously, really that is every book that has a physical copy available. And I was on Abe Books, just searching different authors to see like what pops up, and I searched for Axel Tyree, longtime friend of the podcast, and I wasn't expecting really anything because for the most part he's been published in anthologies. I don't think he has standalone stuff published really at all, but he had a novella that we talked about real early on called A Light to Starve By. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't remember in what form that was released, so I wanted to see if anything popped up on Abe Books, because that's kind of, if it's not on Amazon, Abe is like my next resource. So I searched for him and something popped up. So he was one of the 4 authors of a book we reviewed called The Soul Standard. He co-authored it with Richard Thomas, Nick Corpon, and Caleb Ross, and this came out 2016, maybe.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, and so I'm scrolling through after the search results, and I see that, and I'm like, oh yeah, Soul Standard, but the title was listed as Four Corners, a novel, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And why Livius would that be interesting?
So Four Corners was something that I believe was being worked on. It may have even been the working title of Soul Standard at one point.
Yep.
For us, a little more closely, do I want to go a little more in depth into this, or?
Well, before you go on, the video was called Four Dogs.
Oh yeah, that's right. You are correct. Yeah.
So yeah, the working title was Four Corners for the book.
Mm-hmm.
Four Dogs was the video that we were making in kind of celebration or whatever, in tandem with or whatever.
So yeah, that is it's kind of interesting. So I know you did some research. I want to see where you went with this, because while you were explaining that, I also did some research of my own. So I want to see if I got any farther than you did.
So the thing about the image, which I didn't mention yet, so it's called Four Corners, is what the title is, instead of Soul Standard, and then it lists 5 authors instead of 4. The additional author being Wally Rudolph. And then if you look at the synopsis is for a book called Four Corners, and it is absolutely nothing like the plot of Soul Standard. So I was like, all right, something is really weird here. So I searched for Wally Rudolph, and I found it was still in A Books, and I found a listing for a book by Wally Rudolph called Four Corners with the same synopsis. So basically, this dude wrote a book called Four Corners, and somehow it got mixed up in this listing with the Soul Standard. And the reason that's interesting is because the fucking book was originally going to be called Four Corners.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, that's really strange.
Do you know how it got mixed up?
No idea.
It's the ISBN number. So I googled the ISBN number, and the only thing that comes up anywhere after the ISBN number that's not A Books is the Four Corners by Wally Rudolph.
Huh.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that was just one of those just chance things that someone mistyped a number, and it just happened to be the working title of a book. But then use the picture, and then I don't know how you upload something to A Books, but someone at Thrift Books, I think, did a little bit of number switching.
Yeah, it's just
inadvertently.
It felt like I was almost like it was teetering on a Mandela effect. Like this was going to be the moment where that book all along was called Four Corners, and I remember it as Soul Standard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the weirdest, because we spent years knowing about this book's existence before it came out and always referring to it as Four Corners until when it got picked up by Dzank. I think that's when it changed to being called the Soul Standard. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it just freaked me out. It was just like this weird thing. Like, it doesn't happen very often where like those things just kind of fall into place the way they did. So I did buy the book, and I'm waiting to see what shows up, if I get another copy of Soul Standard or if I get some Wally, whatever his name is, book.
Wally Rudolph. Yep.
Wally Rudolph.
So I just looked up the Soul Standard ISBN number, and they're not close. Like the first 4 digits are, but other than that, so I'm not sure what happened there.
That is so strange.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
I'm fingers crossed I get a book that is the Soul Standard, but like an earlier, you know what I'm saying? Like pre-production copy or something. That's not going to be the case, but
we'll tell you another, I don't want to say friend of the podcast, but Scott Phillips actually blurbed that Four Corners book.
The Wally Rudolph one?
Yeah.
Wild.
Four Corners is a book that will stay with me for a long time. An outstanding first novel by a writer unafraid to scrape the crud off the floor of the human psyche. The best kind of crime fiction. When I Googled the ISBN, I found the press, I went to their page to see what came up.
Yeah.
And that's just at the bottom. They have that kind of scrolling, where it just shows you a blurb, then it moves on to the next blurb. And I was like, oh, Scott Phillips.
Well, I did message the 4 authors of the Soul Standard, and the consensus is that that's weird.
Okay. Well, there you go. My first comment to Rob was like, well, we didn't interview that guy, because we interviewed the other 4 characters in that book. So
there's another weird Rob thing.
There's another weird Rob thing. Well, you put yourself in weird positions. You're like, I mean, look, I love Axel, but you're like looking for Axel Tayari books on like 8 books at like 1 a.m. Like, this is the kind of thing that's bound to happen.
You can't get around that. Yeah, it probably was 1 a.m. I was all doped up on Norco from my hospital visit.
I will say if you don't follow us on social media, you did miss. Rob posted a picture of the collection that he has amassed of books that we've reviewed, and he is 60% of the way there, and it's a really impressive photo to see just 60% of the books that we've read in one place over 8.5 years. I've been showing it to people. They're like, you read a lot, and I was like, you want to see how much I read? This is like less than 60% of what I read in the last 8 years.
Yeah,
I hit him with some math.
that's So I will say, I did. The Abe Books thing is a new thing for me, where if I'm fairly certain that there's not a high chance of me finding a book in like a used bookstore somewhere, I've been looking for the absolute cheapest way to get it on online and order it and ship it to myself. And so some of our earlier books, like Chris Deal's Cienfuegos and Craig Walwork's Quintessence of Dust, like those types of books I've found for like $3 online. And like building up enough of them together, I didn't even pay for shipping. So like $15 would net me like 4 or 5 books.
That's awesome. Here's what I will say: if you're a listener of this podcast and you think that we reviewed a book that you wrote, or someone and you think Rob might not have a copy, like send us a message, because Rob will accept a gift from the author.
Oh my God, that's such a great idea! And you know what? I was just thinking. So I have a spreadsheet. We could actually make that available, like link it in our Twitter or something, like a wish list kind of.
Yeah.
Or just like a record of what we've read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it makes me sound heartless, but I'm so in love with this idea of what Rob's doing that I even went through and gave him some books that I have that aren't like personally signed to me that he didn't have copies of. Like, I have a copy of that here. Put it on your shelf. So, yeah, we will accept. Rob will accept charity books for sure.
Charity all day, every day.
So.
All right, now, Livius, I know that even though we didn't read a book for this week, you did some different kind of reading.
So did you, I think, right?
Yeah, I dipped a toe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark Z. Danielewski, very quietly, by quietly, I mean he was on our podcast like a month ago and didn't mention that this was coming up, even though we talked about the potential House of Leaves TV show and stuff, launched a Patreon account, page, whatever, patronage. And the reward is that you get to read screenplays that he's been working on for, they would like to sell for a House of Leaves TV show. And I will tell you that it's kind of fucking fascinating.
Yeah, so first of all, we are patrons now
Yes.
of Mark Danielewski. So that's, we'll make sure we point that out. And we've been pushing people or like, sharing the link around because it's definitely worth it. And so yeah, his initial drop when it first launched was the first 3 episodes, the scripts of the first 3 episodes. And Livius, you'll probably talk a little bit more about story, but for anybody who isn't aware of this, so far I think I only opened the first episode. That was 60 pages, and I think in conversation about doing a television series, I think he said that he would do hour episodes, but maybe like an 8-episode season or something like that. So my impression is all of the episodes are probably going to be around that 60-page mark.
The second one is exactly 60 pages.
Yeah.
So I made it partway into the second one today. I honestly thought people who work with screenplays are going to think I'm an idiot. I was like, screenplay for like a fucking like hour TV show. What's it going to take me to read? Like 15 minutes? No, it doesn't take 15 minutes to read a 60-minute screenplay, at least not if Mark and thank you for not pointing out that I said his name wrong. It's going to be hard after saying it for years and years. Mark Z. Danielewski screenplays. Oh, they're just like reading a regular book. Like, I mean, I didn't feel like I was getting any less page time or faster page time in reading that versus, the reading a story. And I have some thoughts. First of all, Danielewski can be hard to read sometimes. And I say hard to read because he's a very intricate writer. And I felt that a little bit in the screenplay, some of that was shining through, only that it was harder to read because it was him writing and him writing in these little small snippets, because there's pretty consistent scene changes, like you have in a TV show. So I don't know. I mean, I've only ever read one other screenplay, and it was you'll get a kick out of this. It's the first episode of Hannibal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's the only other screenplay I've ever read. They're called screenplays, right? Even if they're for television, or are they teleplays? Scripts, I guess. What's a screenplay? We should know what we're talking about. Let's Google what a screenplay is.
Well, I'm going to challenge your assertion that you haven't read anything like that otherwise, because if memory serves, that Harry Potter and the Cursed Child book.
Yeah, that was a stage play, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it's the same kind of like that's action
true.
and dialogue.
Yep. And now that you say that, Clive Barker had something like that probably 20 years ago that I read too, was another stage play.
You want to go deep cuts on Warmed and Bound? The story written by Gordon Highland actually at least had some of that, if not like the entire thing being that way. That's
true. All right, so
you're like, that's all I read.
Correct myself. Rob hit me with an actually. You've read. Any rate. So yeah, it was a little more complicated than I expected it to be. That being said, you may be thinking that what I opened was a script or screenplay or whatever we're calling it that started out with Johnny Truant moving into an apartment. Oh, no. This House of Leaves teleplay takes place after the book.
Yeah, that I think I read the first 15-ish pages of the first episode, which comprises basically the pre-credits, like first introductory, the first like pilot episode, first introductory part. And yeah, like when it kind of dawned on me what we were in for, I was thinking, holy, this is like, it's kind of exciting that it's basically, I mean, apparently all new content.
Yes. As you get a little further in, I don't want to say too much because it's his stuff. You should get Patreon. All I can say is that appreciating this, I believe, is I don't want to say required. It helps if you've read the book, because all of this takes place after the book. I do believe that there will be enough explanation and like flashbacks to the content of the book, because you don't want to pigeonhole your audience to only people who've read the book. But I will say that having read the book and having the backstory in your head, I believe is super helpful. So I think he's changed the way this works. There now appears to be like a tier level. So if you want just the first episode, it's $3. If you want, so it's $3 per episode / teleplay. So if you want to get all caught up, $9. It's a worthy place to spend your money. He launched this on Friday, so we're recording this on Wednesday, so 6 days ago. He's got 821 patrons. Not bad. That's a minimum $2,400 a month that he's pulling in on this. So good for you, Mark.
Yeah, that's cool. It's nice that, well, here's what I'll say. Even though over the years that we've been aware of him, and I think much like all of like the main tentpole books of the last decade, I was introduced to it by Livius. Even though I think between publications there's sometimes gaps in his activity, he's always running book clubs and stuff about the earlier books. So I think he even said something in our interview, but like, man, once that guy makes a book, like, it's his book for life. He doesn't like just put it on a shelf and forget about it. So it's nice that he's taking that book that really kind of started a bunch of stuff for him and growing the experience of it and giving his fans an opportunity to experience something new too.
All I want to say is, in the event that Mark's listening, Mark, for your patrons, make that art that you've been putting on Instagram available without the link to your Patreon.
Wait, what?
He's been putting up some cool art. It's like the header for his
Oh,
Patreon page, but it always has, and it'll have like some.
it's got
I was
text
gonna
on it.
yes, but the text is fine. But then after it says patreon.com/MarkCDanielewski. So because I'm telling you that would make some cool like 3-piece wall art or whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so check that out, man. It's interesting. If you're a fan of the book, here's all I can say is that, we've seen a lot of TV shows based on books and movies based on books, and sometimes the author's involved, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they love your baby, and sometimes they fuck it all up. This is canon, right? If Mark
Yeah.
Danielewski is writing a story that takes place after House of Leaves, then it is a sequel to House of Leaves. So that's how I'm treating it, and I'm very excited to get through the rest of it.
It's nice too because like trying to think of the best way to say this. We obviously asked him about this when we were interviewing him, and he has at least part of the experience that we've talked to many authors about over the years, which is um, uh, having an idea for a project, or moving your story into a new medium, and it's just not picking up traction the way that you want it to, and like you could shelve it and forget about it, or say screw it, it's not happening. Or in the case of this, he's kind of taking it into his own hands and building. If this is a successful Patreon thing, he's basically proving that he's got the ability to make something that people want. So he's building his audience. He's pre-building an audience for something, which hopefully means if it's like super successful, it would be more likely to be made, like picked up and made.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too. I don't think 800 patrons is the magic number that gets you a Netflix deal.
Right.
But this has been out for less than a week, so 6 months from now, if there are 40,000 paying patrons, I think that's something you could take and say this is the level of interest in my work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And since we're not reading a book for next week, spoiler alert, yeah, definitely this is going to be some of my reading over the next week. I just really thought, I was like, I've got an hour, I can knock through through these. That's not how it went at all.
You sent me that message, and I was like, I don't know if he knows.
Nope.
Apparently
I
not.
didn't. I didn't know. So
fine.
I will tell you, still, reading scripts is not my preferred form of reading.
It's a different dynamic because, like, pace wise, it feels a little bit more stark. Like you're just getting like beats of action and beats of dialogue without like getting the room to breathe and like learn more about the scene and stuff like that.
It also seems to me like, so this is what ideally would happen, right? Danielewski submits, these 3 episodes to someone, and they're like, "We love it. We want to talk to you about signing you for." Like, I like this because it's House of Leaves, and I know the backstory, and you know what I mean. And I'm interested to see where it goes. If I pick this up cold, I can't see how, based on the material that I'm given, and now I'm not saying this particular, but this format, how I could get excited about wanting to make a movie or a TV show about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'd much rather have someone hand me the book and say, hey, listen, we're going to base the script on this. This is the book, So it just seems like such a skeletal way to make a decision that, you're going to spend millions of dollars to produce content.
Just got to find a buddy in Hollywood that believes in it.
Yeah. Huh. Well, yeah. Any rate, well, I believe in it. I'm digging it so far. Be honest, it's interesting and in a direction that I'm not sure what the direction is yet. All I can tell you is this isn't the direction I saw it going in.
I'm going to starkly change the topic if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I want to talk a little bit about this came up just recently. We have in the last year or so taken a turn to the point where we plan far ahead for books that we're going to review, and that manifests in the fact that there are 10 books already in 2020 that we plan on reading.
At least.
That are on my list, and I'm sure that there's a couple that I haven't put on there yet. But we recently got a release date and cover reveal for the next Paul Tremblay book that's coming out.
Yeah, you sent me that message, and I was like, cool, and I realized like I had not seen anything about this. So while you're talking, I'm looking.
Yeah, so Paul on at least on his Facebook, I don't know, I didn't look around to all the social medias, posted, I think it was today or last night, a cover reveal for Survivor Song, which is the next book that he's got coming out July 7th of 2020. So we talked to him around the time that Growing Things came out, and I think he mentioned the name, and he might have teased us a little plot, but like there wasn't much information. But now he's got definitely a July 7th release date, which is awesome. And there was a cover reveal, which I don't remember much of, but there's definitely a wolf, I think, by a road or something like that. It looked pretty cool.
Yes, it does. I believe that maybe even a fox, not a wolf, but
maybe a coyote.
Yeah, it's weird because I guess I could hit pause. It's just like a little video trailer.
Yeah,
that plays, and then it just like keeps looping. So, yeah, there's a road and a coyote fox wolf.
One of those coyote fox wolves.
Us city boys don't know.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's a rabbit.
There's a really slick looking dog on the cover of this book. So, yeah, I mean, Paul's stuff is always great, and and more importantly, like discussion worthy.
Yeah,
it's a thing for a podcast. There are books that are great. And then there are books that you could talk about, and Paul always delivers something that has some very worthwhile discussion on top of being great. So we'll take it. And I'm glad that our 2020 dance card is filling up quickly.
Yeah,
one of the most stressful parts of this podcast is what the fuck are we going to do next week?
Right.
Yeah.
I heard. All right. So I was aware. I have on my radar one Joe Lansdale book called More Better Deals. But apparently there's another one. So I think Lansdale's got 2 books coming out next year. Stephen Graham Jones has 2. He's got The Only Good Indians and Night of the Mannequins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're getting... Oh, and then there was that whole thing where like 4 different things from Mallerman. Did we talk about this on an earlier episode?
I don't think we did. So he finally got the wide publishing rights to a few things that were exclusive. One of them was Cemetery Dance.
Yeah, on this, The Day of the Pig.
Yep.
House at the Bottom of the Lake.
Which was This Is Horror.
Yep.
There's another one.
Is Goblin one of them?
Yes, that's the one.
Goblin was a special release on Earthling. I have a copy of it, so I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
And there was one other. I think that might be a new one. I think Del Rey picked up all that stuff, and it's all coming out sometime next year. So like, we have an opportunity to talk about Goblin and or on this The Day of the Pig, which would be cool. Goblin is, I think, a collection of novellas.
And Mallory.
And yeah. Good Lord. So we might not have a choice. We're just gonna do all this stuff that's getting thrown at us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know they're not going to put them all out at once. At least I don't think so, because we could just have Josh Mallerman month and at least just strike off like August off the calendar or whatever month it is and say
Maller month.
Maller month. I like that. I think Josh would like that too. But we're definitely going to look to have him on again when one or more of those books drops. But before we get to that, we are going to have an interview next week. Our last interview of the year, I think. I mean, who knows, right? Like, it's always possible. But I guess we didn't talk about it at all last week. Richard Chismar will be joining us. He is the author of Gwendy's Button Box and Gwendy's Magic Feather, amongst other things. And as excited as I am to talk to him about that, he's also like Mr. Cemetery Dance, which, we just mentioned as had the exclusive rights to. It was on This The Day of the Pig that they had, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to talk to him a little bit about not just his writing, but maybe we get some behind the scenes Cemetery Dance stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, and then we're going to have a holiday episode sooner or later.
Yeah, I'm thinking the probably like around the 21st is what it's looking like. So we'll have that. That'll be video. There will be a gift exchange. I understand we're going to be reviewing a movie, but more details to follow on that.
That's literally all I got.
Yeah, me too, man.
As far as interludes go, we've done this is we did one in May. We did one like a month ago when we did this one. So there's like maybe 5 or 6 for the whole year. That's pretty good.
That is pretty good. I think we've forgotten how to do interludes properly.
Yeah.
Any rate, go rest your mouth. I'm gonna go and
I thought you were talking
out...
to our listeners. I was like, what are they? I forgot I had a mouth.
So I don't know what listeners do while they're listening to this. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go finish episode 2 of House of Leaves, the series, and then maybe we'll keep you updated on how that's going.
Yeah. All right, that's wrapping it up for this interlude. Join us next week for a nice interview with Mr. Rister Chismar. Until then, I'm Rob Olson.
And I'm Olivia Snedden. Keep reading.